Good afternoon. How often have you heard the phrase, finding the right financial advisor is like going on a blind date? Anyone? I assumed not very frequently, as that was created through generative AI for me this morning. However, it is a perfect segue into the session that we have today. The experience that we created is somewhat like online dating for your financial future. But rather than spending days, weeks, months, potentially years finding the right match between a financial advisor and an investor, the transformative experience that we have created along with the Envestnet Yodlee team through innovative technology is what we're excited to be able to share with you today. If what I just shared resonates, then you are in the right spot, and we are happy that you're here today. Today we're going to be talking about driving growth and creating differentiated customer experiences. My name is Lauren Stein, and I'm a principal of digital innovation within our AWS Innovation and Transformation Programs organization. I'm thrilled to be joined here by Arun Anor, Chief Operating Officer at Envestnet Yodlee, along with Joe Fiorillo, Strategic Alliances Principal Director at Envestnet Yodlee. Our teams have been working together since earlier this year, and we are excited to be here with all of you today to share in the co-innovation journey that we've created and the solution experience that we've created for Envestnet Yodlee's customers. As for our agenda today, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about who Envestnet Yodlee is, and for simplicity, we'll refer to them as Yodlee moving forward, a little bit about their global footprint and their unique differentiators in the market. We'll then talk about the problem that we were collectively trying to solve. We'll talk about how we went approaching how to solve that problem, the solution and experience that we created for these customers, and hopefully some action items that you can take and methodologies that you can apply to solving problems for your customers and hopefully creating innovative and unique solutions and experience and surprising and delighting your customers as well. And even better, we hope that potentially the solution that we have created together is something that you can bring back and leverage for your business, for your customers, and within your teams as well. With that, I will hand it over to Arun to give us some background on Envestnet Yodlee to frame up the discussion.
Thanks, Lauren. So Yodlee has been around for a long time, since 1999. I have been fortunate to be part of that journey since 2009, so I've seen the company transform from being a smallish, privately held company, taking them public and getting bought, and now we are part of the Envestnet family. So we started back in 99 primarily in the United States, which is still the largest market for us today. We started off with big retail banks, and I'm not going to go through every aspect of what we did here, but basically started with a set of products initially back in 99, slowly graduated and expanded from one big account to multiple big accounts, primarily in the financial institution space when we started off. Then we transitioned to fintech as well as research. So right now we have 4 verticals. We have financial institutions, which includes bank and non-banks. We have technology companies we serve. We also have research customers we serve. So those are the 3 different pieces that we serve from a customer standpoint. Like I said, we were a privately held company. We went public in 2015. By the time we went public, we had already expanded our geography from just being in the US to becoming a global company, which is what we are today. We were then acquired by Envestnet, and our focus on wealth in particular became much, much, much higher as Envestnet is primarily a wealth company. And to Lauren's point, we took that as a problem, and we have been able to solve it, and we'll go through that today. We have now rebranded ourselves, and we call ourselves Yodlee 2.0. We have added a lot more feature function than what we had before. And there are 5 core regions in the world that we serve, and we offshoot off of that, and we have several customers who we serve today as well. So just to show you our scale, like I said, we have 3 verticals: bank, tech, and wealth, and research is a separate segment. We have over 1,000 clients globally. We have 40 million paid consumers on our platform. We have 500 active accounts, 500 million active accounts today in our platform as well. And we have 40 billion transactions we process every year. All of this is, we are in the process of migrating to AWS. We are about 50% of the way there from a project standpoint. So eventually we'll be there completely. Just want to talk about some of our core assets. It's broken up into infrastructure, which is a very, very key component of what we do. Because it's financial data, the privacy aspect, the security aspect, all of those become supremely important. So infrastructure is critical for us. And like I said, we have 54 million accounts, 54 million users, 60 million accounts, 65 billion transactions, which is being processed through our systems today. From a data perspective, we consider ourselves a data company. We have 5 trillion annualized US de-identified users in our system. And that's a big, big asset, which we use on a number of different things, with 40 million active consumers. AI has been, in the last 6 months or so, AI has been the topic of discussion for a lot of companies. We have been in the AI space in 2015. In fact, I started our data science team back in 2015, and we have a large group of people who are dedicated to that space, and we have a large group of data scientists who works for us for the last 10 years or so. And clients, we serve hundreds of big, medium, and small customers. So it could be 2 people in a garage using our service, or it could be Bank of America as an example, or it could be PayPal, or it could be Target. So depending on the type of service they choose from us, it's a small customer, very small customer to a very large client as well. So basically, we have evolved ourselves from a product-driven organization to an analytics organization. The reason we are doing that is because back in the day, we would primarily be focused on being a cost center to our customers. We want to take that and provide value so we can become a revenue-generating company from our perspective. So we are well-positioned as in the fintech market. We are transforming ourselves the way we produce financial advice through an ecosystem of technology, solutions, and intelligence. And finally, we are living an intelligent financial life where our intention is to provide unfettered data access to any consumer so that they can accomplish their goals on a day-to-day basis. With that, it's back to you, Laura.
Thanks, Arun. So when we first started down this path of this innovation journey along with the Yodlee team, they had shared with us the goal that they wanted to try to accomplish was to shift from being a cost center to a growth driver for the organization. And while this is a great goal to have in mind, it is very internally focused, and it's focused on Yodlee. In addition to being pretty internally focused, it's also pretty broad, right? There are many different paths and directions in which we could have taken to think about how do we actually accomplish that. And so that was kind of the first challenge that we had encountered. And so that led us to partner with Joe, to partner with Arun, to partner with broader business leaders across the Yodlee, organization, to think about how do we reframe and take that internally focused goal, and how do we reposition it as being something that is more customer-centric and customer-oriented. And it didn't at all mean that we don't care about that goal that Yodlee has or the business outcome that they were trying to drive. It just meant let's have a starting point and a focus around a customer and how we can solve their problems. And in tandem, how do we make sure that we don't lose sight of that goal that Yodlee has for the organization, which is shifting from this cost center to a growth driver. And so that first kind of focus on not only identifying, but aligning around a specific customer is what helped us to really frame out this problem-solving approach that we embarked on with the Yodlee team. I mentioned not just identifying a specific focused customer, but also aligning. and making sure that we had business and IT leaders across the Yodlee organization that were aligned on a specific customer that we were going to focus on. Once we aligned on who that customer is, we had said, how do we identify a specific problem that that customer has? And so we really pushed the Yodlee team to put themselves in their customer's shoes, not think about problems that Yodlee has, but problems that their customers have. From there, we really spent time empathizing with that customer. And so again, trying to put ourselves in that customer's shoes, that focused customer that we'll share more subsequently and momentarily. But what does that customer care about? What motivates them? What are their goals? What kind of challenges and pain points do they encounter? Who are they? And ultimately, what is that customer doing in the absence of having a great solution that we hope to create for them? We then took it a step further and said, how do we kind of deep dive and understand what is the end-to-end journey that this customer goes through? How do I identify high points, moments of joy, and also various blockers and challenges that that customer encounters along their journey? And what I'll say is that you'll notice everything that I've described thus far, we did before we ever thought about how do we actually solve their problem, any technology that would ultimately enable that solution to come to life, or really any solutioning up to this point. We then conducted a number of ideation exercises with AWS and Yodlee individuals to think about how do we inspire ultimately the solution that we want to create to solve this problem. And at the end of the day, we converged on one kind of think big solution to solve this problem. I'll dive into each of these in a bit more detail, but everything that you see on the screen here and what we did together with the Yodlee team is what we call working backwards. And it really allowed us and the entire Yodlee team to think about and put the customer first. I talked about the customer. The customer that we ultimately aligned on with the team after much debate and back and forth was what you see on the screen. We had described this individual as a growth-minded, client-centered, experienced, driven financial advisor who is affiliated with financial institution. And the words that you see here are very specific, right? It's describing a very specific type of financial advisor. And what's interesting is when we got in a room and we were debating with the Yodlee team, who are the customers that we potentially could focus on, we had thought that there were really just two. There's financial advisors as a whole, and there are potentially investors. But as we really dug into it, we realized there are differences between financial advisors. They have different goals. They have different experiences. They have different journeys that they go on. And so we wanted to get very specific around a focused customer, this specific financial advisor. I think what's interesting too is I wouldn't necessarily just describe this as a persona. It is describing a specific individual in a specific kind of situation. And the reason that we wanted to get really specific, we were intentional about getting very specific around a focused customer. We didn't want to boil the ocean and try to be all things to every type of customer. And so we intentionally tried to get very specific around this customer. It also allowed us to make sure that the solution that we ultimately created was going to benefit this customer. And also it allowed us to start with a subset of financial advisors so that we could first experiment with our solution, understand what works and what doesn't, be able to iterate and scale from there. Joe will talk about this momentarily. I had said too, we went back and forth a lot. Is it a financial advisor that we're going to focus on? Is it an investor? I think this whole exercise allowed us to really just think about both of them and think about the investor, even though they're somewhat removed from the value chain standpoint from the Yodlee business, it allowed us to still think about that investor. And while they weren't the focused kind of user of the solution that we created, there's significant downstream benefit and impact that that investor will have in the solution that we ultimately created. So I'd encourage you to ask yourselves, when you think about your organization, you think about your business, do you think about your customers in this way? Are you focused on the right customers? Are there ways in which you can think about breaking apart various types of customers so you can have a starting point to think about experiment and testing and ultimately being able to expand and scale from there? In addition to having a specific focused customer, we also wanted to get very specific around a pain point or a problem that that customer has. And so again, the intent here is, as you can probably see, the theme is get very specific at first so that we understand who we're solving a problem for before we move into any of the solutioning. And so in addition to that customer, we had also said and identified through anecdotal feedback that the Yodlee team had, there's some industry-wide research and survey work that the team had conducted independently prior to this engagement, and it was around the problem of new client prospecting and finding new potential clients. And so that's exactly the problem that we were focused on. We had said these financial advisors, they exhaust time and money in non-efficient ways in ultimately trying to find and convert new quality leads. And we also wanted to think about a specific goal or situation that that individual was in. And so we had said the ultimate goal of these financial advisors is that they want to grow their client portfolio, scale their businesses rapidly, and provide personalized solutions to their investors in a seamless manner. And so this, what we would characterize as kind of a today statement. It's a specific customer in a specific situation or specific context. This was kind of our anchor for everything that we did and all the ideation that we did moving forward. And so once we had aligned on that kind of initial frame or that anchor, that customer problem that we were trying to solve, we had started to think about how might we solve that problem. This wasn't starting yet into full solutions to solve the problem, but it was kind of a reframing of what the problem statement was. And it allowed us to hopefully inspire the working group around ideas that ultimately could feed that solution. And so as you can see on the screen, we had said, how might we reduce the amount of time that advisors spend finding and converting new qualified investor leads, giving advisors time back to grow their existing book of business and scale opportunities with clients. So you'll also notice here is that this allowed us to really focus on the biggest customer benefit for these financial advisors, which was time, giving them back time to be as efficient with their work and their day and their goals as possible. What we then did, and there were probably 15 to 20 or so of us in the room, mix of AWS individuals as well as Yodlee participants, and we had said, all right, now that we've all talked about this customer, the problem that we're trying to solve, we did some ideation exercises around how might we solve it, we broke out into 3 different teams. And each team was tasked with coming up with one solution to ultimately solve this problem. And so I'll share with you the output just at a high level of each of these 3 groups and what they came back with. They then pitched it to the broader group, and we ultimately combined and aligned on one solution, and that's what you'll see Joe share with us momentarily. What you will find is that there's a ton of commonalities across all 3 of these. So the first group came back and they pitched what they called prospecting autopilot. And this was basically a propensity lead scoring model that would identify the highest quality leads, rank them, and deliver them seamlessly back to the financial advisor. One of the groups came back with what they described as Project Athena, which was an intelligent lead scoring model that would basically match a financial advisor along with an investor. And finally, the last group pitched, fun name, they had called it Invest Match, and this was a matching service that would identify next best action for a financial advisor to take. And so you can see there's a ton of similar themes, and I didn't go through every single feature that we'd incorporated into these, but what we had said was, hey, let's take some of the most important benefits and features to all 3 of these, and let's combine them into one big solution that ultimately we can align on and rally behind and create a vision for what we want to build for these financial advisors. And so we did just that, and we had called this big idea a digital engagement matching experience. And ultimately, it was designed for financial advisors to help them with prospecting to potential investors. It would pull information, historical information, financial information from an investor. It would incorporate a matching algorithm. It would schedule meetings between a financial advisor and an investor. And it would also incorporate a dashboard for the financial advisor so that they were able to leverage data and analytics to help them best convert that potential prospect or lead into an actual client. In the visuals that you see towards the bottom of the screen, we fictitiously kind of leaped into the future. And we thought about what would the experience look like? What would the experience feel like if we were actually to have something like this? And so we created, and this was a couple weeks after this on-site engagement. I'll walk through a timeline towards the end of the session. But we created these 8 kind of storyboard visuals. They look very cartoony in nature, they were, but picture's worth 1,000 words. And so this really allowed us to think, not from a technical standpoint, but very experientially, what would it feel like if the financial advisor was leveraging something like this? And in addition, what would the experience look like for the investor too? And ultimately, the initial release that Joe will share with you doesn't incorporate all of these, but it allowed us to really paint a future state vision of what we ultimately wanted to pursue. And so those visuals, along with these 2 documents, were really the big outputs or outcomes from this innovation engagement that we conducted together, AWS and Yodlee. And we call them our working backwards documents. So it consists of a press release and frequently asked questions document, PRFAQ, we often refer to it as. And the press release itself, it is written as though it is going to the customer, or in this case, it's going to the financial advisor. And it's articulating in 1 or 2 pages who is the customer, the problem that we're trying to solve, and ultimately articulating in words the experience that we aim to create for them. So it's really, we think of it often as a vision document. It's not technical in nature. There's no technical aptitude that is needed to understand something like this, but rather it's something that can be socialized and shared with all business and technical leaders across the Yodlee organization. So even individuals that weren't in this actual workshop should be able to read this document and understand what it is that we aim to create for these financial advisors. And the best thing that came out of this is that the Yodlee team is able to share this document to create organizational and, I would say, cultural alignment around what it is that we aim to do before we are spending time, effort, resources, capital into actually building something. So again, we put these together, and what we find is that it's through refinement, it's through socializing a document like this among business leaders within the Yodlee organization, individuals who haven't seen this before, asking tough questions, redlining this document, that the most important kind of benefit and value of this comes together, and we get great clarity around what it is that we aim to do. And so after a couple of weeks in socializing this document, the team had said, all right, that's something that we want to pursue and actually figure out how do we build it. So again, we don't even think about the how, technology, services until we have alignment via that document. In addition to that document, that vision document, the press release, and by the way, we call it a press release, it doesn't actually go to press. It is very much used as an internal planning document to create alignment, and we often actually use it as a kind of a proxy for a requirements document when we get there. In the FAQs we also put together, we want to anticipate what might business leaders across the Yodlee organization ask about this, right? How are we going to measure success? What teams maybe internally might own it? Various questions like that, more business reality type of questions. And then we also like to think about what might the financial advisors, what might the customers want to know if they had their hands on this, right? How much will it cost? Is it subscription-based? Is it going to integrate with other Yodlee digital products that they have? So this is ultimately what we delivered to the team, and I'll pass it over to Joe now, who's going to walk through kind of what the end-to-end experience that we created looked like.
Thank you, Lauren. So, as Lauren mentioned, I was part of the digital innovation team. And we went down to San Antonio, and our AWS counterparts started with working backwards. And full transparency, I was wondering when we were going to get into the tech. We knew the solution we wanted to build. We knew what it was going to look like. We were ready to build a product. But they all took us back. And they said, no, well, let's identify the customer. We know who the customer is. And we worked in these teams, separately, together, got back, and we didn't really understand who the customer was. So through this exercise of working backwards, we identified that. We also needed to come up with what is the digital experience. It's one of the rules of working backwards. And we came up with what it is. And this product will be released within the next month. But obviously, we'll have a few customers that are very interested. It's a strong demand for the product. And they'll help us with the experience, customizing it to what they're looking for. But this is what it is. I'm a consumer. The institution, the financial institution, will drive how I find this application. But I'll enter my information. I'll tell them what I want to tell them about me. What am I looking for? What am I looking to accomplish by being here today? Where's my interest? What are my needs? Am I looking to retire, save for college, et cetera? And now they'll start to build my persona of who I am in an intelligent financial life. Enter my information of where I live, how do I want to interact, where do I want to interact, which will allow me to get the right advisor, banker, in future states for me. Now you look at the nuts and bolts of the application, right? The technology. What we do as Envestnet Yodlee, combined with what AWS offers from an infrastructure and solution perspective, this will all run through the system using our AI capabilities and what we do to be able to come up with who are my choices? Who can I choose as my advisor? And I'll be able to see their profiles, who they are, what types of consumers do they work with? Is that my type? Is that the kind of person that I want to trust? And I will pick one of these. Now it kind of comes from both perspectives. The advisor gets to see my profile, who I am, understanding how they want to work with me, what can they do for me, how much information I was able to give them. I could give them all of my financial wellness, all of my capabilities, and what I can do, so that they could start the planning process even before they meet me. As the consumer, I can see who is my advisor. What are their hobbies? What type of investors do they like? How do I want to interact with them? I could push, if you see on the right, I could push a button and schedule the appointment to my liking. In future state, I could push a button and set up a video call. I'm tech savvy. I want to talk to the advisor now. Let's see if they have that capability. And on the other end, we're able to determine is an advisor that wants to interact in that fashion. Are they tech savvy? Can they accept that call from a consumer on a Saturday afternoon and interact? And we did all this, as Lauren mentioned, through the AWS process. We had the 2-pizza team, which is small enough to feed with 2 pizzas. And that really gave us the agility and the speed so that we could make the decisions very quickly. We could identify the customer. We could identify the pain point. And we can move right towards into the solution. If you look on the top, we were able to build the minimal lovable product. Instead of the minimum viable product, it's the lovable product, what we wanted to. And that knowledge sharing that came from the 2 teams. On the AWS side, it was really interesting because we had Lauren and her team, which was great. We had an architect who had actually worked with our Yodlee product, so he understood our capabilities. On the Envestnet side, there were our engineers, our product owners, and you had someone like me who was a sales guy, but I was a financial consultant in a previous life, so I understood what the customer was looking for. Everyone wants to gather leads, but are they good leads? Are they strong leads? And that's what we were able to accomplish, and I'll hand it back over. Thank you.
I wanted to put into perspective the amount of time that it took for us to do all of this. And it actually was incredibly quick. And a lot of it was because of that two-pizza team that Joe was sharing. So I'll take you back to earlier this year. Mid-March is when we all met in San Antonio in person. And in 1.5 days is where we accomplished virtually everything that I had described earlier. Aligning on who the customer is, identifying the problem, thinking about ways in which we'll solve those problems. Even that breakout session that I was describing earlier, where you had the 3 different groups, that was not across days, weeks, months. That breakout session and what all those teams came back with and those slides that I shared of what their actual output was, that was a 45-minute session. We intentionally believe that constraint breeds innovation. And so we were very specific and intentional with the amount of time that we all had together. And so again, it all started, this working backwards engagement, mid-March. We put together a couple weeks after that those working backwards assets that I was sharing earlier, that press release, the frequently asked questions document, and those storyboard visuals. We shared those back with the Yodlee team. They were able to make some of those revisions, and they had said, let's move forward and actually figure out how do we build this. So as you can see, early May, we all met in Chicago again. And by the way, I should share, the working backwards engagement that mid-March, 15 to 20 or so individuals, a lot of business leaders. These are individuals that are close to and understand the financial advisor. Oftentimes it's product individuals, it's marketing individuals, customer experience, sales, those kind of individuals who maybe aren't the actual customer, but they can speak on their behalf and they can anticipate the needs that they have. And so those are the individuals that were part of that first kind of mid-March session. When we went into the solutioning workshop, this was more technical individuals on both ends, Yodlee and AWS. We spent 2 half days really taking that press release and thinking about how do we actually scope what that minimum lovable product, as Joe was describing, right? It's not every single feature that we want to incorporate, right? We don't need all of that out of the gates, but we want something that's good enough that people don't want to go back to not having it. That's often how we would describe or think of a minimum lovable product. And so in that solutioning workshop, we really thought about what does the scope look like? What are the various phases of releases and various features that would be part of that? We thought about technical dependencies, technical risks, understanding from Yodlee's standpoint, where is their data? Where does it live? How do we access it? So those are the kind of things that we thought about in that solutioning workshop. And ultimately, what are the services that will power this and technology that will bring this to life? After that, a couple weeks later, mid-May, we had a full proposal that said, here's what it will take to build. Here are the resources on both ends that we would need. Here's the duration of time for the actual sprint. And so that kind of end-to-end was really 2 months. So while there was some time that we took up front, a couple of months, to really make sure that we were focused on the right customer, and we had the business alignment that we needed, we had the right support from a vision standpoint and from the Yodlee team members around where we wanted to go. It took a couple months, but it probably saved a lot of time on the back end because we knew or had really good confidence that what we were creating was solving a problem for that specific customer. So we decided to actually move forward end of June 22nd or so, from support and the kind of approval and okay from the InvestNet Yodlee team. And end of July, maybe even a little bit later after some additional discovery work, is when we actually started the build process with the right individuals on both teams to actually move forward and figure out how do we actually bring this to life. Here we are today, end of November. The product is ready, like Joe said, ready to go to production in the next month or so when the Yodlee team wants to actually launch and is ready to release this. I think Joe had mentioned this earlier, but I can't understate the value of having the right individuals in the room to allow this to be successful and ultimately create a solution that we believe will solve a problem for the focused customer. It's a mix, really, of some of the business individuals like I was describing, technical individuals who understand and can speak to existing infrastructure, environment, data, things like that. That's where we get the alignment. That's what allowed us the agility to move quickly, to make quick decisions and take bias for action, to continue to progress this innovation experience that we had together and actually be able to now have a tangible product, right? It's not just on a piece of paper. It's not just that press release. It is a tangible product that we actually have, which we're excited about. And again, I'll say, yes, there's some work up front, and as Joe mentioned earlier, right, he kind of thought, well, we already think we know what we want to build, so are we kind of wasting time? But it really helps with clarity and understanding who are we creating this for, right? Rather than actually doing it and hoping that it is something that individuals will use. Pass it over to Arun to talk a little bit through conceptual architecture that we built and kind of where we're at and where we're going.
Thank you. Just want to show you what we're thinking from a conceptual architecture perspective. As you can see, there are several components here, which is dependent on Amazon AWS. There's obviously a public, the consumer comes in, there's a public subnet, there's a private subnet. Again, because this is all financial data, it is imperative on our part to keep the data very, very secure. So we have taken that into account. We have also included a VPC, which is embedded as part of the architecture. This is a high-level view of that. So just to reemphasize, again, where we are today, I think the way we went about this project, in my mind, compared to what we have done over the years on how we built out other products, was incredibly fast. I think I'm not going to go through the methodology which Joe and Lauren talked about, but first and foremost, it just took us 3.5 months to build the whole solution that we came up with. And that's incredible from my standpoint. We've been in business for a long time. A lot of it is, it's not just about technology or technical aspects, it's about culture, it's about shifting the culture, thinking about it from a customer standpoint. All of those are key components which fed into the fact that we could deliver it with such a focused team in 3.5 months. So we are launching in December. What we are actually going to do, well, we started already, is typically the way we launch our product is we don't want to just go what I call GA completely in a big bang fashion. We've identified a bunch of customers who can work with us. We are doing POCs with them. We are taking their feedback. So they have provided us valuable feedback so that we can change the product to incorporate as much of those requirements as we could. And then we'll push it out into production. That began back in middle of October, so we've been at it for a month and a half or so now. And right now, our goal is to roll it out into one fintech. Again, we want to start small. We want to make sure that the product is fully baked. We want to work out any kinks that they may find. And then we are going to iterate and push it back into the larger world, so to speak. So what are we gonna accomplish as a result of this? So basically, what are the business results we will see as a result of this solution which is coming out in the marketplace? First and foremost, it increases the individual consumer and advisor productivity. Joe touched upon this a little bit. An advisor is slammed with trying to talk to hundreds of consumers on a daily basis. We've automated a lot of that. So this will give him or her time to focus on the individual, understand their needs, understand their goals, and figure out how can they help them specifically to accomplish their goals. If this goes into a financial institution, the financial institution automatically will earn the trust again because it's at an individual level. Even though they're dealing with millions of consumers themselves, the advisor is interacting with the individual consumer, and that goes a long way. From a Yodlee standpoint, the awareness is much higher compared to what we have seen in the past, will be, based on this. That's our goal. So we will raise ourselves, and our value to the table is going to be much higher as well. It's not going to be, like I started originally, we want our customers to see value and use us to generate revenue for themselves, not just for us, and not just as a cost center. That's the transition we are making. And finally, we are also enhancing the creation of technology through analytics. That's, again, a key component for us. We have transitioned away from just focusing on building out products and solutions, but we're adding a layer on the analytical layer as well. And finally, increasing the conversion that we see from an active user base, so through the leveraging our AI and ML techniques. So there may be dormant users in our systems. Because of analytics and because of what we've built out, we expect the conversion rate to go up and hopefully scale substantially compared to what we have on our systems today, right? I think it's back to you. Oh, Sumi, sorry. How can this help you? So first and foremost, the key point is customer-centric. So we started by understanding or trying to figure out, what does our customer want? What do they want us to think about? What is their problem? How do we solve it? What do we do to help them, versus me coming up with my own strategy from a product standpoint and saying, this is what you deserve to have, Mr. Customer. That's a big shift that I think I would encourage you to think about. And every company has a lot of knowledge. I would say start with that. Try to get into your teams the smartest people that are working in the most complex projects in your company today. They're obviously completely swamped. They will be, and that's not going to change. But in order for these projects to work, you need to compromise some of their time and have them participate in these projects. They will add a lot of value, and it has to be across the board as well. The other key aspect to make sure that people are aligned to the vision and what you want to accomplish, you have to have regular touch points, making sure that the design is going the way it's supposed to, and you're learning from that, and consistently talk about the bigger picture and make sure that the team sees the bigger picture on a weekly or perhaps even more often basis, right? And I talked about this. Earlier, how we went to market. So basically, we went to market by identifying clients who are in POCs today, and that's what we call patient zero. That's also a shift that we have made as a company. I would encourage you to think about that, because again, if you release features, functions without it being field tested, the likelihood of you running into problems is much, much higher, versus trying to, when you have a customer go at it and test it out on your behalf, a small subset, you learn more, and you can incorporate that, and that becomes part of your solution, right? That's it for me.
Thank you. So if you found this interesting and you're interested in understanding more about how can we apply some of this thinking to help solve problems that we have for our business, I'd encourage you to take a look. Feel free to take a screenshot of this. There were a number of innovation sessions that we had yesterday. Those will be available shortly on demand. We do have other sessions later today, number of sessions on Wednesday and Thursday as well. If you're looking for potentially more of a deep dive, further than just what you'll see at reInvent, feel free to take a picture of either of these QR codes. The one on the left will request a meeting with an individual from our AWS Innovation and Transformation Programs team. The one on the right will take you to various ebooks that we have, and also information on our AWS Executive Insights webpage. We'll save time for questions. We've got a little bit of time for some Q&A if you have it as well. But I'll just say thank you all for your engagement. Thank you for being here. And my big ask, the only way that we can continue to make content and build on content and improve it every year is from your feedback. So please do take a couple of minutes at the end of the day today or after the session, if you have the opportunity, to go into the app, fill out the survey to give us some of your feedback. And thank you very much. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. If you have a question, thank you.